For much of human history, sharing a bed was not the norm. In fact, separate sleeping arrangements were quite common. This might seem surprising today. We often associate sharing a bed with intimacy and love. However, looking back in time reveals a different story. Let's take a journey through the history of sleep arrangements. We will see how cultural norms and practical considerations have shaped how people sleep. From ancient civilizations to the modern day, the way people sleep tells us much about their lives. It reflects their values, beliefs, and social structures. By understanding the history of sleep arrangements, we gain a fascinating glimpse into the evolution of private life. It allows us to question our assumptions about what is normal or natural, and it reminds us that even the most intimate aspects of our lives are shaped by forces beyond the bedroom door. In ancient civilizations, sleeping arrangements were often determined by social status and practical concerns. In ancient Egypt, for example, the wealthy enjoyed spacious homes. They could afford separate sleeping quarters for husbands and wives. These separate chambers provided privacy and comfort. Poorer couples, however, often lived in cramped conditions. They had little choice but to share a bed. In ancient Rome, too, separate beds were common among the elite. Roman villas often featured separate bedrooms for the master and mistress of the house. This practice reflected the patriarchal nature of Roman society. It gave men a degree of independence and control. In contrast, slaves and servants typically slept on mats on the floor. They often huddled together for warmth. This highlighted the stark social divisions of the time. The tradition of separate sleeping arrangements continued into the medieval period, particularly among European royalty and nobility. Kings and queens often had separate chambers, each with its own bed, attendants, and rituals. This separation was not necessarily a sign of marital discord. Instead, it reflected the political and social realities of the time. Royal bedrooms were not just places to sleep, they were also stages for courtly life. Rulers would hold audiences, receive guests, and even conduct business from their beds. Maintaining separate chambers allowed monarchs to project an image of power and authority. It also gave them a degree of privacy in the midst of a very public life. Section 4. The rise of the twin Victorian morality and the separate bed revolution. The Victorian era saw the rise of a new trend in sleep arrangements, the twin bed. This marked a significant departure from the shared beds of previous centuries. Several factors contributed to the popularity of twin beds. Advances in manufacturing made furniture more affordable. This made it easier for middle-class couples to furnish their homes with separate beds. However, the rise of twin beds was not just a matter of practicality. It also reflected the social and moral values of the Victorian era. Victorians placed a high value on modesty and propriety. They believed that separate beds promoted healthy sleep habits and discouraged immoral behavior. Twin beds became a symbol of respectability and middle-class aspiration. Section 5. Hollywood husbands and wives, the 20th century shift to shared sleep. The 20th century witnessed a dramatic shift in sleep arrangements, with shared beds becoming increasingly common. This change was influenced by several factors, including the rise of Hollywood and the power of advertising. Movies and television shows often depicted couples sharing a bed. This helped to normalize the practice and make it seem more desirable. Advertising played a role as well. Furniture companies began marketing double beds and king-size mattresses as symbols of marital bliss and romantic love. The message was clear. If you wanted a happy and fulfilling marriage, you needed to share a bed with your spouse.